Welcome to Hot Takes with Jim Baker, presented by Sumus Development Group. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, executives, investors, and experienced business leaders to discuss the challenges, opportunities, and decisions shaping today's business world. From leadership and culture to sales, growth, acquisitions, and value creation, you'll hear practical insights from people who have been there and done it. So grab a notebook, settle in, and let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hot Takes, presented by Sumus, and of course, my good friend Jim Baker. All of you know him. He's an author. He's a very successful entrepreneur, and he has a business now where he helps other businesses look for exit strategies. And Jim, it's always good to be here with you. I appreciate being here. And how you doing?
Yeah, good. Doing great. Thanks for being here today as well.
Always.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you have another guest that I can't wait to talk to. You want to introduce it, kick it off?
Sure. Yeah. He's a friend, also somebody who I've known for probably the last 5 or 6 years. Tully Ryan is with us today, and probably one of the premier M&A people for businesses of all types, small, large, in the North Carolina Southeast region. He also has a unique new part of his business that I'm excited to hear about today. But basically the theme that I really wanted to cover with him, as you know, Sumus works with companies to get them ready to exit. Yes. Think of me again as a physical trainer where I'm going to get you in shape, and then hopefully you have choices down the road, and the choices aren't made for you, i.e. liquidation and or untimely deaths or whatever. But we want to be able to get you in the proper shape, so to speak, from a revenue, EBITDA, customer perspective, a culture perspective. So when you're ready to go, a guy like Tully can get you top dollar.
Right.
So I thought we'd tackle his knowledge today on what he likes and dislikes and what he thinks business owners should be doing to potentially get them ready to have the successful exit someday.
Right. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Do you mind? Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Jim, thank you. And you're right. It's been 4, 5, 6 years, and we've actually done a transaction together. So we got to know each other pretty intimately during that. So, and I love the segue, Jim, because, that's really what we're talking about is helping businesses prepare. There's a lot of demographic information right now that people just don't realize, but it's coming down the pike. And I've been doing this M&A for the last 10, 11 years, and you're right. I do deals agnostic. My deals range from the $1 to $2 million up to the $20, $25 million range, just below investment banking and just above the business brokerage style transactions. And we work with a lot of businesses, and we really work with a lot of businesses that aren't prepared, and it takes some time. And I love, what you were talking about, helping businesses prepare. And, a lot of folks don't realize this, but every day in the United States, 10,000 people turn 65. And if you read some of the reports coming from McKinsey, they estimate that 6 million businesses are going to transition over the next 10 years. And of course, this is just not a big wave. There's 36 million businesses after that. But just in the next 10 years, they estimate $14 trillion of wealth is going to transfer with those businesses. McKinsey also says that only 5% of those businesses are going to successfully sell. So there's 92%, a small portion there's going to be a succession, but 92% of those businesses, McKinsey is saying, that are going to close their doors. And most of it is because they're not prepared. Exactly what Jim is saying. The capital is there, buyers are there, but they're not prepared. And I think that's a great subject for this conversation.
Yeah. So when you're going out and looking for companies, if I'm a business owner, what advice do you give me, and or what do you look for that you want to tell us about that I can then say goodbye to you for 6 months or a year and then come back when I'm better prepared?
I love to have conversations years in advance. I mean, ideally, I would like to have a conversation with the business owner 60 months before a formal process even starts. 36 is good too. But what we like to look at is certain things within the business culture, owner dependency, customer concentration, those type of things. Certainly, we want to look at the financials. All of those can be fixed, by the way, but it takes time. And if a business owner finally raises their hand and say, I want to sell now, you don't have that time. And that's why a lot of these businesses don't sell. They just have too many problems that could have been fixed that are preventable. So what I would suggest to any business owner, to your point, is let's have a conversation. It may be with me, and maybe with another advisor, maybe with your banker, your wealth advisor, but have a conversation. That's where it starts. Right now, the M&A ecosystem, as you know, Jim, is very, very reactive. There's nothing, business owners, work 20, 30, 40 years building this business. And then the very last minute, they decide to sell with no preparation. That's something that we have to fix.
Sure. What do you run up against? I mean, are there some, you mentioned a few things, but I mean, when you're talking to somebody and they haven't even really thought about it, I guess, you're catching them, it sounds like, at a time when they have now made it for one reason or another, they have to sell. So what are the obstacles you have to get past with some of these founders?
Well, I do want to make a point that they do think about selling, but they just don't.
They don't follow through.
They don't. Well, they try to follow through, but they don't tell anybody.
Gotcha.
So they're trying to formulate a plan, before it happens, but they don't have the right people in the room to make it happen. So, but some of the things that we run up against, I think the biggest is really expectations. How fast can we sell it, and for how much? And a lot of times that there's, especially on the value of the business, we're always resetting that expectation. Everybody thinks it's worth a lot more than it is. And so that takes a little bit of time. A lot of deals don't get done because the owner thinks it's worth $10 million when it's only worth $1 million. So that's a big one.
How do you do that? How do you effectively value a company? What do you look at?
Well, we look at their financials. Yeah, certainly. We look at their financials and we recast their financials. What we're looking for is pure cash flow. And so there is a way to do that. And it takes a little bit of time, but we can do that. And then we also look at, what other businesses similar to theirs, similar size and so forth, sell for. So we have comps, just like in the real estate market, we have comps. And so we have to sometimes spread that information out with these sellers, and eventually they may not like it, but eventually they kind of understand the value of the business is based on cash flow and based on the multiple of the comps. Now, at the same time, I also tell business owners that, hey, it is worth whatever somebody is willing to pay. Right. And so they have, so sometimes we go out without a price, but at the end of the day, most of the time, that business has to be financed. So it may not even be up to the buyer or the seller, but it's also up to the financial institution that's going to finance this thing. So the banks will go through their own process and their own due diligence and do their own appraisals or business valuations as well. So this is a very, there's a lot of moving parts in one of these transactions.
I can understand why you want to get together, not the day before the sale, but maybe a year or more. I mean, you do the same thing. You're trying to get the folks, first of all, thinking about what it's going to take, and I can't imagine what goes into that process. Jim, and I want you to weigh in on this too. What are the necessary steps for an owner right now to be thinking about? Eventually, they're either going to die, or they're going to sell for some reason, So it's inevitable. The business is going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So today, if the folks are watching, what are some of the things they ought to be really thinking about to get their business in a position to sell?
I think from a pure organizational standpoint, they shouldn't be running their business as a lifestyle business that they're extracting their car payments through the business, they're taking their vacations through the business, they're commingling their personal with the business. I mean, at a minimum, they're two separate entities. You have your family, your personal stuff, and you have this business, and there should be a wall. It should be separated. And somebody then from the outside who's looking at it could see, oh, I see where the owner took a distribution or a salary or a bonus to pay for whatever they're doing on the personal side, but it's separate. And there's a lot of businesses, and I'm sure you run into a lot more than I did, but I remember when we were looking to acquire companies, the wife had a credit card, the husband had the credit card, the kids were, siphoning off the business as well. And so the ultimate thought that you have is, I don't know if I can trust the key word, that this business is actually going to be salvageable. Because if they are commingling their finances, that's probably the easiest thing to do.
Sure.
And it's also the one thing you shouldn't do. It's kind of like you get in trouble with your financial situation and you have to pay the bank, the IRS, or your medical bill. The first entity you should pay is the IRS. The other two you can always negotiate with.
Right.
So it's the decision-making that then erodes the trust as far as I'm concerned. There's a million things. I could sit here all day and answer those questions, but I want Tully to speak in. But that's like one of the simplest things you could fix right away.
Yeah, I think that's very key, and is keeping your books clean. I mean, we see everything. We see boats on the balance sheet and going through the financials, country club memberships. I've even seen season tickets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's okay. I mean,
Packers would be okay.
Oh, Packers
Steelers,
okay. Well,
I understand
right.
you, but yes.
And again, that's okay as long as we can document it. What we call those are ad backs. But I would go back. The first question I would ask a business owner is, what is their plan? Even if it's 3-5 years out, what is their plan? What is their strategic plan? Some owners may not be ready to sell, and some owners may be frustrated because they can't grow. And so a lot of we've been involved in this. I also represent buyers, strategic buyers, to help them grow their business through acquisition. So, I started at a very basic level, but if it is determined that they want to sell their business even years out, I will suggest let's go ahead and do a valuation so you can see exactly where you are. And that is key. And then how do we optimize the value going forward? And doing exactly what you recommend, and that's just kind of cleaning things up. But yeah, and every business owner is different, for sure.
I think the hardest part for someone like you would be you engage with the business owner and they say they never want to sell.
But that's okay. That's okay. But back to your point, there's only two things that are going to happen. They're either going to close the doors or they're going to sell or some sort of succession plan to the family.
Right.
There's no other. The business isn't going to go on by itself.
Right. So then when that happens, though, do you then try to educate the owner on what you just said? Hey, this is life. This is inevitable. Here's the three things that are going to happen. You're not going to live to be 7,000 and have this business forever. So.
Well, that's an easy conversation. I think they I think they understand that. Now, at the same time, I've been at closing tables where the business owner is very emotional. The business owner could not hand over the keys. So even after the paperwork has been signed, even though the check has been slipped out, he still could not. We were asked to leave the room by the wife, and then we came back in. She popped her head out. We came back in, and she had the keys because he could not physically hand it over. If you think about somebody building a business from scratch, 20, 30 years, that is that person's identity in a large part.
Oh yeah.
And so this is a very emotional type of transaction, and we've talked about it a lot. This is a relationship business. Totally. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of other things, but this is all about relationships.
The businesses themselves, when you finally get to a point where they want to sell, do you create the game plan? Do they create the game plan? Is it how is it done where you go from step one to the end game?
We create the game plan. We create the narrative. We put the marketing plan. They want to be involved in it. What I tell business owners, the best way you can help me sell your business is run the business like you're going to run it for the next 10 years. Make the same exact decisions day to day as if you're going to run it for the next 10 years. Do not take your foot off the gas pedal. Keep doing it. Keep making the same hiring decisions, inventory decisions, all of that. If they do that, we're going to be fine. It's when they try to micromanage the process, and the process is the process.
How do you overcome the belief that because you're an expert at selling businesses, but you're not industry specific? Mm-hmm. And we had a situation last year where you weren't
healthcare
centric.
Yep.
And this owner was healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then overcome that?
Well, it really depends on the owner if we overcome it or not. But I think if you're a M&A advisor and you know the process and you understand business and you understand their business, you can sell. I think a lot of times, and look, not judging other M&A advisors that focus or cater to specific industries. But the way I look at it is if they are representing the same industry over and over and over again, and they're selling to the same handful of buyers over and over and over again, there's a little conflict of interest there in my mind. Because who are you really working for? Are you working for the seller, or are you working for the buyer that you're going to come back to in another month or two with another opportunity? So it's a little interesting there, but I just kind of let the dust settle, however it's going to settle. It's really up to the seller at the end of the day on who he wants to utilize, and in some cases, he or she may feel it's better to have somebody that knows the industry intimately, more than somebody that's kind of more agnostic. And I will say this, there is enough business to go around, sure.
Are businesses hotter than others? Location?
Always,
just like real estate.
Always. Location is important because when you find especially an individual, the smaller, you gotta, the location makes a difference. Do you want to be in the mountains or do you want to be at the beach? Do you want to be in a metro area or do you want to be in rural parts of the country, right? But certainly the industries, the verticals are, they're just up and down all around. Right now, business services like HVAC, plumbing, electrical work, roofing, those are hot businesses right now. And honestly, where I'm seeing, and what with private equity, we deal with a lot of private equity firms coming in. They're looking at industries that aren't going to be touched by AI.
Really?
Yes. So they're looking at kind of a man and 2 men in a truck type of businesses, and where they believe that AI I believe is going to touch every business, mostly on efficiency, but that's what they're looking at. So we're seeing private equity firms where you always thought that private equity firms would buy businesses in the $50-100 million range. They're coming downstream, and you've probably seen this, downstream a lot, to where they're buying. Again, they're buying businesses for $5, $10, $15 million. They're acquiring these businesses, and we could talk more about this, how to do this, but they are putting a platform together and growing it that way.
Wow.
I mean, as we become more and more technologically advanced, you still have to drink water, plumbing.
Yes.
You want heating and air conditioning.
Yes.
You want
to get a repairman.
You want goods delivered to you.
Yep.
You are going to move at some point in time.
Yes.
So you have all these basic things, I think, that a lot of these schools have overlooked, right? Because everybody wants to go get a white-collar job somewhere. And, I do some volunteer work at a local high school, and I keep telling them, I mean, think about what I just described, owning an HVAC company that sells for $20 or $30 million, or an electrician company or whatever. Instead of just going off and, saying you want to be a middle manager somewhere, because that's what's going to get crushed by AI.
Yeah. And if you think about AI and you think about what they're talking about through robots and so forth, it will be hard to send a robot out to somebody's house, crawl into the crawl space, or go behind the house and take apart a HVAC unit or whatever. So you're always going to need boots on the street to do that. Although AI is going to make it much more efficient. I mean, there are companies out there, Skillmaker AI, which is a Wilmington-based company, is really providing those type of folks AI, where they're actually using these goggles and they're basically have a playbook on how to fix these things, and they're doing that for car mechanics. They're doing it for HVAC companies. And really, they're speeding up the whole education process even. So there is companies out here rolling out AI to help even those industries. But at the end of the day, you're going to need boots on the street to do it.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, you talked before about getting to the table and you're ready to close, and the seller is crying. It's his baby. How do you advise them to, I guess, separate the emotion from the actual business? Because I think in my world, you have people that are extremely passionate about their business, and you could look at the business from the outside and say, man, if you did this, this, and this, it would triple in value. But they won't do it because they've always done it the way they've done it.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's their life, it's their identity. How do you overcome that?
Well, I think that's personality too. I mean, there's a lot of folks that just want to stay in their comfort zone, right, inside their box, and not really get out of it. And so they're going to find. I was talking to a business yesterday, and it was obvious to me that they are just happy to do what they're doing, and they're going to be a business that, the trajectory is going to be what it is and pretty flatlined. And, and that's great. Somebody will buy it. They'll see the opportunities. And what I like to do, just from my background of being an entrepreneur as well, is I like to look at business and say, what if they did this, this, and that? And so that's how I present businesses, matter of fact. So it's not what the current owner has done or what the current owner says could be done, because we don't value businesses on that. But what I like to do is pitch to the buyer what the business is and what could be done to improve the business or grow the business. And that has been, from the way I operate, as an advisor, that's kind of helped me. But I don't try to change the way that the business owner is running their business. That's not my job. My job is to optimize the value that he's put into the business, so when we sell it, he gets every penny he deserves.
Right, but that kind of falls back to your 15-minute ago response where the owner thinks the business is worth $10 million,
right,
and it's only worth $1 million.
Right. That's setting expectations. I had to bring them back, saying it's not, right?
Right, but if you're not willing to tell them or advise them to change,
then
they're never going to get the 10.
You're right, but I'm not telling them it's worth 10. They are. So they probably should think about how they want to get to 10. And if they want to get to 10, I'm happy to have that conversation, because my answer would be, okay, let's go acquire 1 or 2 more businesses,
right,
fold them in, and then over time, 3 to 5 years after that, you will be worth 10.
Right.
There's an easy solution if that's what he wants. It's about communication and a little bit of collaboration.
Is that the only? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that the only way you can close the value gap, so to speak? I mean, are there other methods? The owners overvalued it. The reality is $1 million. Is there a way to close it without operational, or is it just expanding the business? Is that the only way to do it?
If the gap is small, we might be able to get there.
Yeah.
So if it's within 10% of the value, I'm okay with that.
Sure.
But when you get into 1,000% difference of expectation, there's probably no way to close that gap. So, and we could close it. Look, that's why I like working with private equity. That's why I like working with strategic buyers, because there is ways to close the gap, and it's based on deal structure. So it's not just a cash deal. It could be done, and you've been involved in this with earnouts and rollover equity and things like that. There are mechanisms within the deal structure that will close the gap, that will make both sides comfortable. And so, there are ways, but to a certain extent.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Well, I think also, Bill, you have to, what is the value, how is the business valued in the industry that business is in?
Mm-hmm.
But it's based on EBITDA, which is operating profit, and there's a multiple of that. Then to answer your question, you have to tweak the operating profit. You have to reduce your expenses, or you got to grow the revenue. If they don't care about profit at all, they just care about growth and footprints everywhere, then you got to invest and you got to get more footprint to get the value from that 1 million to 10 million. So it just depends on how it's valued. But I do think that overall, and you could speak for this, it's most of the business on average are valued based on their operating profit.
Yeah, their EBITDA cash flow is really what it is. That's how the bank is going to base their financing on as well. So, yep.
So
all right.
We call that EBITDA, or seller discretionary earnings.
But I think one thing a lot of owners fall into the trap is, I'll just grow my way out of it. Well, if you've been an organic growth company for the last 10 years, and let's say you average 10% a year, why suddenly are you going to go to 25 or 30 without changing and doing things differently? So you're never going to grow your way out of it. Yeah. The only way you can do that is if you change or you buy.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a real strategy, is grow through acquisition, that many businesses are using.
I need to buy some businesses. I need to grow.
Most business problems don't get better with time. Leadership gaps grow wider, operational efficiencies become habits, missed opportunities become regrets. Sumus Development Group helps business leaders identify challenges early, create practical solutions, and move more confidently towards their next stage of growth. Because the cost of waiting is often greater than the cost of action. Visit sumus-inc.com for more information.
So have you run into situations where you got a business to buy, but as they're buying, everybody's realizing that the seller in this case has more bandwidth and actually would be better to run that business going forward, even though the buyer has the money.
Yep.
But once they're together, the seller has the talent. And have you run into that before? And how do you overcome that?
I'm dealing with that almost every year for the last 3 or 4 years. Is that sellers will come to me and say, "Look, I'm not ready to retire. I want to grow the business. I want to, these are individuals that might be in their, mid to 40s, mid to higher 50s, and they're not ready to retire. They want to take a few chips off the table, but they want to continue on, and they need the capital and they need the resources to grow their business. Those are perfect. I know exactly the type of buyer that we need, and that's usually private equity. And that happens more and more, and there's a little niche to do that, and those are those businesses those transactions are actually kind of fun for me to do. But that's happening a lot because these business owners, they're a little bit frustrated that they're not growing as fast as they want, and they have a passion for their business. I'm dealing with one right now that wants to stay on, and he wants to grow it, and we've hooked him up with a private equity firm. It's under LOI, and we're going to hopefully close in the next 45, 60 days on that. But those type of conversations are happening more and more.
From your standpoint, based on the market right now, are technology companies, service companies, product companies, what's hot, what's not hot, what's higher valued, what's not valued?
First of all, the SBA has increased their limit from 5 million to 10 million just I think it goes into effect July 4th, and that's going to even expand the buyer market even more. So that's really exciting for both buyers and sellers coming up. Technology companies, software companies, I think from what I'm seeing out there, there's kind of a tectonic shift going on because of the AI, mostly because software as a service, that monetization model just doesn't really work with AI. If you think about software as a service is based on the number of seats, and that was great for any type of software that had workflow and so forth. But with AI, with efficiencies, those seats are going to reduce if the software and the AI implemented into the software is really good. So there's kind of an interesting play going on in that space right now. It's going to be interesting to see how the dust settles there. I think software as a service is not dead, but it's going to change. And I think that space is primed to have some aggregation as well. But this AI, this whole AI conversation is really kind of interesting in all businesses. I mean, it touches every single one of the businesses out there or verticals, but especially in the software realm. What I'm seeing is in this business, and I've just been studying it because I'm kind of involved in a little bit of it right now, is it's not so much software that they're selling, it's intelligence that they're selling. And how do you monetize intelligence? And there's certainly different ways, but that's kind of the conversation that's going on in boardrooms and management meetings and startup ecosystem right now is how do we shift to that? So that's a whole show.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your new AI tools.
Well, I would say it's not an AI tool, but it gets back to what I just mentioned. It's a intelligence layer, and so we created this after years of seeing, what was happening in the M&A space, and really the success that these businesses, like we talked about, a lousy success rate of businesses are going out to market only 25%, successful transaction success. McKinsey 5%, and in any type of engineering, that is failure. That's not good. So my colleagues and I have been thinking about this for years, and how do we improve that? How do we improve those rates? And you can't improve just by everything we talked about. You cannot improve the success rate of a transaction if you start the day that the owner wants to sell, which is within probably 12 months of his goal of getting out. So we developed a company called IQ Exit, Smart Exit, and through the lens of what we do day to day. And what we do is really, and IQ Exit is all about exit readiness intelligence. And exactly what your mission is to help businesses prepare. Now, we're not an exit planning tool. We're not a valuation tool. We're not a marketplace. We're not a brokerage. This is strictly exit readiness intelligence. And the way it works is that banks, and the banks have a problem as well in this, but banks will provide this to their business owner customers. One of the first banks that are coming on, they have 50,000 commercial customers out there, business owners that own businesses. These business owners, first of all, they don't know what their business is valued at, and they don't know, what is happening in the M&A market and trends and so forth. And the bank, more importantly, they don't know what the intent is from these business owners. They don't know if these business owners are looking to sell in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. So there is a disconnect there. And so what IQ Exit does is simply surface that exit intent by the business owner. And so what is happening in the market today as it relates to the bank is, and you and I have talked about this, a week or two before the closing happens from a business transaction, the business owner will call the bank and say, I need my payoff amounts for the credit line or for the business loan and so forth. And the banker or the relationship manager at the bank will say, I just had lunch with you last week. What is going on? Nobody really knows, or they're not surfacing that intent early enough. So the bank, by the time they hear about it, it's a week or two before closing. They don't have time to react. They don't have time to refer that business owner to wealth. They don't have time to refer that business owner to treasury. They don't have time to position the bank to be the financier to the deal. So typically what happens is, that they lose the account, they lose the deposits, they lose the loan, the opportunity, and most of all, they lose the opportunity to bring on assets under management based on the transaction itself.
Sure.
So what the banks are telling us is a regional bank is losing somewhere between $80 and $100 million a year. And that's what IQ Exit helps. It also helps the communication that we've been talking about today, getting that business owner starting to think about it and communicating with their advisor, being it the bank or the wealth advisor or the CPA, about getting prepared, 60 to 36 months ahead of time. So that's what kind of IQ Exit is, and it's we launched it coincidentally at a great time with all these businesses transitioning, and at the great time where all these banks are trying to figure out how to solve this because it's affecting their balance sheet big time. And if we let the success rate, if you think about 6 million businesses transitioning, and the success rate of anywhere between 5% and 25% being successful, wow. Think of all those businesses that would just close. So there is a bigger issue than we could even dream about.
Well,
so,
and then the banks and the opportunity to keep an account if you're losing $80 million.
A year, and that's many different accounts, right? But that's still a lot of deposits, and that affects their balance sheet, and there's risk there.
And the business owners themselves, they may be very good and well in tune to what they do, but they probably don't know how to transition, from business and then to selling and what needs to happen. So, I wish I thought of it. Well, that's all I'm going to say. I wish I thought of it. That's a wonderful idea.
We saw it inside the transactions. We saw it inside the M&A ecosystem, I would say. And being involved, kind of the center of I call it the center of the bow tie, being the center of the bow tie of all these transactions. We talk to bankers, we talk to the attorneys, we talk to the CPAs during the transaction. So we see what everybody's pain points are.
Sure.
And so what we're trying to do is just bring the whole ecosystem together. The M&A ecosystem, as you know, Jim, is very fragmented. Everybody is working in their own little silos, and until the very end of the process, we bring everybody together. That needs to end. We need to bring people together much earlier to have more success in these transactions, and it has to be done. And so we think IQ Exit is positioned. And again, this isn't a little app. This isn't artificial intelligence. This is an infrastructure that we've built, and there was really nothing in the industry in that space. And when I talk about space, I'm talking about 18 months, 24 months before a transaction. We're upstream from any formal process. So that space, we're actually trademarking it as exit readiness intelligence. That's kind of our space up there.
What's the process for a business to use the tool?
Great question. So we've worked with business owners, and we know that their time is valuable. We know that their bandwidth is sometimes not all there, right? They're thinking about 10 different things. So it is key for us to provide a superior, phenomenal user experience. So the way the process works is the bank will introduce IQ Exit to their customers through an invitation or through some sort of email or maybe even on their account page. The business owner will go in, register with us. This is all free, by the way. And within 60 seconds, providing us some very basic information, we will provide them with an exit readiness record, and which that record will provide them with that indicative value range or projected value range based on their intent, time of intent of exit. But we also provide a superior executive summary of the business. We also provide them with benchmarking so they can compare their business to other businesses like theirs that are out there on the market. And we also provide them with M&A trends, what is happening out there in their own vertical. And so the business owner kind of knows where they stand, and this is all permission-based. So with one click, they will provide that same record to now the banker or their wealth advisor or their CPA or even attorney, for that matter, whoever introduced them with one click. What that does is now the advisor has the same sheet of paper, and they can have that real first conversation saying, okay, this is what your business does. Here's what you're thinking. You want to exit in 3 years. This is your indicative value range or projected value range. Are you happy with that? Yes, if I can get that, I'm happy. Or no, I want it to be $10 million, like we were talking about. Well, then the advisor can say, all right, as a banker, I'm not doing transaction. Let's pull the right people. Let's get people around the table to help you. That's the kind of conversation that we want to happen.
Wow, I can see where that would be a real upside to all the parties involved.
The time is important. It never really, we've timed it because we're so focused on the user experience. It takes a business owner from start to finish less than 60 seconds to fill out. I mean, there's only 7 things that we really need to know to do this, and it takes our system. And look, we do leverage AI, and it takes our system roughly 6 or 7 seconds to create a exit readiness record. Now, let me also mention, we call it record and not a report on purpose because this is temporal by design. So they could start, they could create a exit readiness record with IQ Exit, and over time, we will be updating that record based on market, based on comps, based on different things. So we will be constantly updating that record, and then we will nudge the business owner and say, hey, your indicated value range went up, or we're seeing that a big trend of people going or companies going to market like yours in the next 6 or 9 months. So we will give them continuous updates on where they are, and of course they will continuously update the every once a year the revenue or their exit intent. So this you can start this the day you start a business, and it lasts the whole life cycle of the business.
So it's online now?
Yes, it's line. We have CPAs, we've got wealth advisors, we've got other advisors using this. We just got notified just this week that a very large advisor platform, over 1,000 advisors are going to be joining this. So this is growing really fast. I am speaking later this week in Charleston, and and I was kind of going through my notes, and we launched in February. So as of Friday, we've launched 106 days ago, and we've already got one large internet enterprise bank client that's doing somewhere between $10 and $15 billion size, regional bank. We're already going through procurement with that bank, which is phenomenal. And we've got 2 other banks lined up right behind them, and we've got conversations going on. And these aren't conversations just with community banks, regional banks, but we're also talking with super regional and national banks. So every bank that we're talking to, they recognize the problem of their blind spot is this business owner exit intent, and that's what we're surfacing. So this is a very easy. I don't really have to talk about the product itself. I just have to talk about the problem and how we're solving it, and people are kind of migrating our way, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
How'd you? I see the need why the banks would want it, but did you stumble upon that, or was that part of your strategy?
Well, interesting. I talked to a lot of people. He's one of them, by the way.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of people, and there was a meeting I had that was very influential to the way I was thinking about it last summer. And I'll just say it publicly. I met with Chris Knott, who was the founder of Peter Millar, and now he's with Johnny O here in Raleigh. And we were talking about it, and I was really picking his brain about brand. And he said something really important to me. And he said, you got to think about your brand of where you are, but more importantly, where you're not. You don't want to be there, right? And so I was thinking about IQ Exit and how in our distribution model and where we want to be and where we don't want to be. And I was thinking, well, where we want to be is with the banks, with the wealth advisors, because they have already built trust. And so we use that. I don't know if this answers your question, but we're using the trust and the relationships that have been built by the banks as our distribution. And so with that translates into when a business owner with an invitation, the business owner kind of feels trust with IQ
Sure.
Exit. So,
Yeah.
So did we stumble across it? I would say no, because I knew the banks had this problem. Did we stumble across how we created the model and our distribution model? Maybe we stumbled across it, but it was very strategic, based on conversations with many, many people. And that's how a lot of these entrepreneurial things get started anyway.
That's good. That's good. I can see where that would be a very relevant tool, and obviously it engages the business owner along the way.
Yep. And it really, to your point, when you opened up about helping businesses prepare, exit planning and so forth. Again, IQ Exit is not an exit planning tool. But what we can tell the advisor or the banker is when exit planning needs to start.
Right.
And I think that's really, really important. We look, I advocate for exit planners. I advocate for business brokers. I advocate for M&A advisors, investment bankers, whoever it can. And this is the way the business owner should really think about it too. Whoever can help me sell my business for as much as that I want or I could get, the business owner should invest in that.
If you were giving some advice to business owners, what are the primary do's and don'ts that they should be focusing on?
Well, it kind of gets back to the same theme I just mentioned. The don't is don't think you could do it by yourself. It takes reps. If you think you can go out, another conversation. If you think you can go out and shoot par for the first time ever, you're not going to do it. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of reps. And so my advice to the business owner is find people that will be part of your deal team that have a lot of reps, whether that's a wealth advisor, CPA, an attorney. Make sure the attorney has reps in M&A. Same thing with your intermediary, whether it's a business broker or M&A advisor. Make sure that they have a lot of reps. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the vertical that you're in, but just getting deals done. Make sure they have the reps. That's my don't is don't try to go on your own. And the last thing is do not wait until the last minute, because again, if you're in business right now, that business has value. Don't wait till the last minute when you don't have time to fix some things. Every business is not perfect, and so there are things that need to be fixed. And don't wait to the last minute to fix them.
On that point too, the optimal time to sell a business is when you're 75% the plan.
Yes. So if you look at the life cycle of the business, it's a bell curve. Think about a bell curve. You want to be going up. You don't want to be plateaued, and you certainly don't want to be having a negative trajectory, right? Going down. So you want to go right before. You always want to sell when you're going up. So keep growing.
And do you always advise the seller to take the best deal monetarily or the best overall deal based on culture, money, fit, et cetera?
The latter, always. Business owners are different. There are some business owners that just, want as much money and they're done, right? I've worked with some of those business owners. Most of the business owners that I will engage it, because I have my own decision who I want to engage with. Mm-hmm. And so when I go in and I look at a business, first of all, I'll spend some time with the business owner. I will typically walk around the business with the business owner, and I could feel the culture. I want to represent business owners that have built culture, and that's really important. And so when I understand that, and I understand what their core values are, and I think that is so important and overlooked when you're selling a business. What is your mission and what is your core values, and does that buyer represent the same? That's really important. And I think yes. So I look at all of that. I'd rather work with those type of businesses and business owners. Those are going to be very successful sales. We might have to go through a couple more buyers to find the right match. But because it's not just about getting the transaction done, you want the transaction to be successful long term.
I would assume a lot of those owners would like to have their culture, their trust continued.
Well, that's their legacy.
Yeah, right.
And so we talk about that, in our first or second meeting. What is your legacy? What is it? And a lot of these transactions, the business name is going to carry on. In most cases. So that is the business owner's legacy. And most business owners are not, in these metro areas. A lot of these business owners are in smaller communities, which it matters. They have their logo at the baseball diamond and so
the baseball shirt, the soccer shirt.
Exactly right. So they're infused in that community, so it does matter.
I don't know if I should ask this, but has there ever been a business you walked away from that you said, no, this is not going to work for me?
Yes, and it's not very hard.
Really?
It's not very hard. For me, it's not very hard.
What kinds of things?
Well, I don't want to go into a lot of details, but
no.
but it's when you're sitting down with the owner a couple of times and there's contradictory, kind of misinformation and so forth. And it's, look, again, this is a relationship business. And when I engage with an owner, that transaction is going to take, I set the expectation from start to finish, it's going to take a year. So through that process, the business owner and myself are going to be very intimately involved in getting this transaction done. I'm going to spend a amount of time with this business owner.
Yes.
My question to myself is, yes, do I think I could sell the business, but do I want to spend this time, with him? So I do look at it in a different, through a little bit different lens.
Well, you'll do a better job for somebody.
I'm going to do a great job for anybody.
I understand.
But I won't have such heartburn.
Better way of putting it.
Going through the process. Let's put it that way.
All right.
Yeah, I think also too I think sometimes business owners will overinflate initially the success of their businesses. Mm-hmm. Just be honest, because Tully hates surprises. Buyers hate surprises. Everybody hates surprises, and it's okay if you're not growing at 30%. You're growing at 5%. It's okay if you've lost a client. And especially if you know what you're doing to make up for that client. But when you're hiding things, then that becomes a big problem.
And to your point, Jim, what we do in at my firm and in my team, we go through due diligence before we put it out on the market, where a buyer will go through due diligence. We go through weeks of review not only financially, but we also go, we have our own way of going through, and we actually take them through a due diligence process and to find those surprises, because if there's a surprise at the end, then we're going to start all over.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go find another buyer. So that's just, how we do it. There are intermediaries that will, list a business for whatever the business owner wants them to list it for, and they just get it on the market tomorrow. And I'm certainly not going to judge, because sometimes, a blind squirrel finds a nut, but that's not typical the process that needs to take place. So there needs to be due diligence on the beginning.
Trust seems to be the big word here.
Big. It's a lot of it.
Of all of it, yeah.
Yeah. It's a M&A is a different game.
So
Guess what time it is?
At that time already.
It is.
Well, this is where we go to you, and we've talked now for a bit. For those watching, what are the top 5 takeaways do you think they should get from our little get-together today? What are the 5 things you think are important?
Start early, and then think about starting earlier than that.
Okay, that's 2 right out of the way.
And I would say, Jim was talking about how he's positioning to help business owners sell their businesses. Talk to Jim. Talk to other professionals. The Exit Planning Institute is a great place to start. And you could look up, and there's people, not too far from every business owner that has that background that can help. That's what I would suggest they take away from this. Start early, and then start earlier.
And be sure to get that report and hook up with you.
Well, they could get the report. They could reach out to their banker. They could reach out to their wealth advisor, their CPA, and eventually they will have access to that. But that's how a business owner will get the report. Yeah.
So Tully, if anybody's interested, where can they find you?
Well, if they want to reach out to me, they could go to carolinabusinessbroker.com. I've got a website there, and I also write for the Wilmington Business Journal. I have insight columns there. So they'll be able to find me online somewhere. So just Google Tully Ryan and M&A advisor, and I will most likely come up somewhere.
Beautiful.
Tully, thank you. I learned a lot. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tully.
Jim, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Hot Takes with Jim Baker. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with other business leaders and entrepreneurs. To learn more about Sumus Development Group and how we help organizations enhance value, strengthen leadership, and prepare for future growth, visit sumus-inc.com. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building something meaningful.